Basketball fans, thank you again for joining me. You know what this is. Yes, it's me again. I like to call it the best, the most informational, the most educational, and the most entertaining basketball content on the planet in the form of a podcast. You know where to find it: iTunes, Google Podcasts, Red Circle, Spotify, Stitcher, also streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Facebook. So there are no excuses, if you will, to not get a little piece of it. So I want to make sure I let you guys know I appreciate everybody for joining me. Subscribe. That is the word of the day, of the week, of the month, of the new year, 2021. So I appreciate everybody for joining me. Make sure that you go and give me a follow on social media, specifically on Twitter at Tate's Take Hoops. That is TATES TAKEHOOPS hashtag where basketball lives. Now, you know that I teased it a little bit, where you can find your favorite, anywhere you find your favorite podcast. And I also let quite a few people know, specifically you Atlanta Hawks fans, because I've gotten a lot of people that have been calling me on my phone. Yo, Tate, I'm trying to get the scoop on what's going on with the Hawks, man. I need to know what's going on. Keep me in the loop. And I'm like, listen, I know you guys are just going to have to be patient. I got my dude coming on, Steve Holman, the voice of the Atlanta Hawks. He's going to have all the answers to the questions that you guys may have. And without further ado, let's get ready to bring him on from our green room. This would be none other than not only my former colleague, but I think it's okay for me to call him a lifetime friend. That would be four-time Georgia Sportscaster of the Year, Atlanta Hawks Hall of Fame, and Georgia Radio Hall of Fame recipient, voice of the Atlanta Hawks. Find him on Twitter at Real Voice of Hawk. At Real Voice of Hawk. That's no one other than Steve Holman. Steve, thanks for joining me. How you doing?
Great, Deshaun. It's nice to be with you on this outstanding program of yours.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate it, and grateful and overly appreciative. Listen, I want to, before we get into the Hawks, season number 36, 2,658 consecutive calls on the Hawks. Listen, and I'm not trying to make you feel old, I promise, but I just made 36 years old not too long ago going to show how long you've been doing this, man. Is that the, first of all, is that the record? Is that the league record? It's got to be somewhere close.
Well, no, it's actually Chick Hearn, the old Lakers announcer. He had 33 something consecutive games. And wow. His streak ended when he was 86, and the only reason his streak ended was he died.
Oh, geez. So he died doing the job, which, he
died in the summer, but his streak was still going at that point. So it's going to be, I have to go about another 8 or 9 years, but I'm only 66, so I think I can. I can swing that.
Ain't no thinking about it. You will, trust me. And I've obviously covered this team for close to about 5 years or so. And obviously you've been doing a phenomenal job, and just really a blessing being able to work beside you for the times that I've had the ability to do so. Again, before we jump into the Hawks, you've seen so much. We just talked about how long you've been a part of this whole thing. I know it's difficult to maybe narrow it down to your most memorable moment, but maybe just give me one that just sticks out like a sore thumb beyond the others of things that you've seen within this franchise.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that Dominique had been an exclamation point on just about everything that's been good that I've done with this team, and especially that. To be there to see him become the all-time Hawks leading scorer and call that was pretty exciting for me. It was kind of a sad night. His last night as a Hawk, we all kind of knew it before he got traded. That was a game that was kind of special too. But, everybody talks about the 1988 series, the famous 7-game series between the Hawks and Celtics, and the Dominique-Larry Bird matchup, and that famous 7th game. And that whole series was just a lot of fun. And, we won Game 5 up in Boston and took a 3-2 lead in that series, and had a chance to win it back in Atlanta at the old Omni in Game 6, and then just ended up at the end losing by a point or two. And Cliff Livingston took what would have been Dominique's shot at the end. That Dominique still always talks about that right now. That how did Cliff Livingston end up with the ball when he was supposed to have it? So but there's so many things even recently. The series, the 7-game series against the Celtics, the Kevin Garnett series when nobody expected us. We were a number 8 seed. We had the Bibster on that team, and That was a lot of fun. It was Al Horford's, first year coming in, and that team surprised everybody and took the Celtics to a 7th game in Boston before losing. So that was fun. And now, of course, this group that we have, I'm probably the most excited right now about this team and the young core that we have, not to mention just the free agents that we've signed, but just the young core, the 5 guys that are 23 and under. It's very exciting. And then to have the additions of these free agents that Travis Slink brought in, and Tony Ressler, our owner, giving the go ahead and spend that money. We had the most money available this summer in the free agent thing, and just if we get everybody healthy and ready to go, I think we're going to have one of the deepest teams in the league for sure. And I think we'll have an opportunity to really surprise a lot of people because with the shortened season after the bubble and everything, I don't think anybody really knows us that well right now. So when we do get our act together and everybody's healthy, I think it's going to be very exciting.
One of the things that you mentioned was talking about some of the players that have been acquired over the course of the duration of the off season. And the crazy thing about it is seeing the Atlanta Hawks, I guess, essentially look a little bit more similar to last year's team because of some of the injuries that you've kind of alluded to. So with that, we've yet to see the significant minutes, at least consistently anyways, from those recently acquired players, where you do have almost all of them, if not all of them, between Bogdanovich, Rondo, the rookie in Okongwu, Gallinari, Chris Dunn, all of these guys. Do you have an updated, I guess, timetable on when some of these guys might be returning?
Well, Travis was on this morning on his usual weekly show, and he was talking about the time frame, and he thinks that Rondo's very close, could play maybe this weekend when the Hawks play. Tomorrow night they play in Phoenix, and then Friday night Utah, Saturday night Portland. So on a back-to-back against 2 very tough teams out west, that would be good if he came back. The Gallinari thing's probably another week to 10 days, I would say, for him with that sprained ankle. It was too bad, too, because he had a hurt foot, and he just came back from it. He played 3 minutes in Brooklyn, and he hurt it again. And the thing with Bogdanovich, he had really struggled from threes recently. He started to get things back on track. They had just put him back in the starting lineup, and then he got hurt the other night with that knee thing, that cracked knee or whatever it is. And he's probably a 4 to 6 week thing right now. Chris Dunn had the surgery on his ankle, so that's going to be a little while longer before he plays. And Okongwu, I think, is getting closer. We got Tony Snell back last night.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, he played a little bit last night near the end of that game, so he's going to get his feet wet, and he's going to be a big help defensively. And Chris Dunn, as you know, everybody around the league considers him the best defensive player, guard in the league. So I think that's really going to help tighten things up when he gets back. And, it's a 72-game schedule instead of 82, so it means you have to kind of get things going quicker than you normally would in an 82 game. But I think that they're going to right the ship. The good news about all of these injuries is that Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter are getting all the big minutes that they need right now.
Yes.
Cam is getting better every night, and DeAndre Hunter has become a real pro. And I think those two are going to be in our starting lineup, I think, for a long time to come, for many, many years. And, of course, with Trae, along with Kevin Huerter and all the young guys, and Capella is only 26 himself. And, it's going to be, when they all get back, I mean, Lloyd Pierce is going to have some juggling to do with that lineup. He's going to be 10, 11, 12 deep, it's fantastic in these COVID days, too, with the way the league is, having all these problems with teams not being able to have 8 guys available and games being postponed. And, today they came up with all these new rules to tighten things up for the COVID stuff. So, I think they'll fight through it. I believe that the league, has pretty good plan in place, and we'll all fight through this. They have that week off or 10 days off in between the first half of the season and the second half to make up some of these games. They took that into consideration. And of course, by then, by March, when we start again, maybe more and more people will start having the vaccine. I'm in that older group, so I get mine Thursday for the first.
Okay.
I get to get it on Thursday, and hopefully the more doses that they get available, it'll loosen up for maybe, that somewhere along the line they might say that baseball, basketball, football, for the good of the country's morale, maybe they'll let all the players get vaccinated, coaches, and they don't want to step in front of anybody in line, but if there's a lot left over and some people aren't getting it, why not? Why not let our guys get it?
Lucky you, Steve, getting the opportunity to jump in front of everybody else, man, and getting some of that vaccination.
That's about the only good thing about being old is dirt,
You definitely mentioned quite a few things that I definitely was going to ask and want to talk about tonight. One of them being last night's game against, depending on when you're hearing this podcast, against Philly. I mean, the outstanding and amazing job that they did fantastically in the fast break points, outscored Philadelphia 21-2 in that category. From a rebounding standpoint, this team has been doing an amazing job, 73-51, out rebounding them as well. Got out to a 35-point lead at one point and won by 18 points. I think probably the most impressive thing is just they've been able to keep the turnovers under control for the most part, only 8 of them on last night. You talked a little bit about the 3-game West Coast road trip that's coming up at Phoenix, who's 7-4 on tomorrow, followed by at Utah, who's 6-4, and then the Blazers currently 6-4. How do you anticipate these games in terms of results, with it being their first West Coast trip of the season? I mean, obviously I don't expect for you to come out and say they're going to lose or whatever, but just how do you anticipate the way that they match up with those teams?
Well, all 3 of those places are very, very tough places to play always.
Yes, they are.
But probably the good news is that there won't be fans there, only a handful of fans in those places. So especially like Portland, where, they have a raucous crowd there always. So for them not to have anybody there is going to make a big difference, I think. Now, for the Hawks, the last time they had a back-to-back, they ran out of gas on the second night. You might remember that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So they're going to have a back-to-back, and they're going to travel. They're going to go from Utah on Friday night, travel to Portland, play there on Saturday night. Mm-hmm. And then the another part about it is they have to fly home right after the game from Portland because there's not much of a turnaround, because the Dr. King Day game is Monday at 2:30 against Minnesota. Right. So when you play it, 10 o'clock Eastern time on Saturday night, and then have to fly home. I think the itinerary shows them getting in at 5:52 a.m. On Sunday morning. So, and they're going to have to get tested when they land, the COVID testing, and then they can try to get a day off and then play Monday at 2:30. So that's going to be a very, very tough turnaround right there too.
I was going to ask you, and you mentioned as we're talking about some of the games on the road and turning back around and coming back home and so forth. What do you think that the difference has been about this Atlanta Hawks team on the road versus at home in terms of their performances? Because while the record may not necessarily show it, it appears to kind of look like they've been playing a little bit more of a cohesive unit and group on the road than they do more so at home on sometimes.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of the veteran, leadership that they're getting. And, Rondo hasn't played, but he's been on the bench. He's like another coach out there. I mean, if you have seen any of the games, you see him up talking to the referees, and they always tell him to go sit down. And he's always out talking to players, to our guys. And he's been very helpful to Trae, I think. And Brandon Goodwin has already mentioned how much of a help he's been for him. So just to have these guys around, the veteran guys that have been there, I think certainly help on road games. And the other factor is too that the fans, are not in those buildings where you don't. And we've lost a couple of games at home too because we didn't have the crowd to give them the energy that they would need at home. Like the game against Cleveland and the game against the Knicks that we ended up losing after 15-point leads. I don't think that ever would have happened if we had 15, 16, 17,000 people at State Farm Arena, because they wouldn't have allowed it to happen. They would have kept the energy up. So it's a weird year that way. We've already seen a lot of crazy scores, games that you wouldn't expect. For instance, Phoenix and Washington. Washington struggling mightily as they were, and Phoenix goes in there and they get their doors blown off. It makes them 7-4 now, and you figure, how did that happen? Well, that's just, I think it's the season, it's the COVID, it's the whole, everything's different. Guys are being locked down now back in the hotels again. Today they came out with the Board of Governors of the NBA and the Players Association, and now guys won't be able to even see family in the lobby of the hotels anymore. They're going to stop. You can't slap somebody's hand at the free throw line if they miss a free throw now. They're not going to allow anybody hugging before the games with the other teams. They want no interaction after the games. So they're really tightening up all of these rules for at least the next couple of weeks. And it's going to be interesting because when the teams travel, they're going to be stuck in their hotels, and they're going to have their meals there, their meetings there. They're not going to be allowed to get to the arena anytime before 3 hours before tip-off time. So there'll be no shoot-arounds. Those things won't be allowed. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be different for players, and it's not as extreme as the bubble was, being stuck in Orlando for 4 months, but it's going to be very tough. And the teams, the guys that have the mental strength, I think, to handle that, those are the teams that are going to do well, I think, through all of this.
And that's why we got my dude on here to educate all the people, man. Steve Holman, 4-time Georgia Sportscaster of the Year, Atlanta Sports Hall of Fame and Georgia Radio Hall of Fame recipient, voice of the Atlanta Hawks, of course. That is at Steve Holman. Make sure you give him a follow. You see the Twitter down there handle on the bottom near towards the ticker. And crazy to all the things that you mentioned. Wow, how all the effect of the way that COVID has played on the NBA as a league in general and everything across the board. We were just talking a little bit about the game last night against Philadelphia, in which I do want to pinpoint last night. Trae Young, 26 points, 8 assists, 9 for 19 from the field, and 3 for 7 from 3. Let me ask you this. I'm trying to think of how I can form it, but I'm just going to ask it because I only know 110% real the way that we do on this program. Are we past that little state of, I guess, weird energy or chemistry or whatever it was, whatever you want to call it, now that we see, because at one point I think we saw some limited contribution, at least from a scoring standpoint for Trae Young. Are we kind of like past that at this point?
I think that's gone now. And they're both good kids, John Collins, and that, and what a great kid he is, and what a great kid Trae is, and they both have terrific families, and these are things that are going to happen when you're living with somebody for months at a time. Like, this is a family. We're all a family. I mean, it's a little different for me and the broadcasters around the league now because we're not traveling. But I mean, generally there's 30 or 35 of us that are a family, and we're together for 6-7 months. I mean, and there's going to be, how it is. Even at Thanksgiving, you're going to get Uncle Bob and Uncle Jim are going to start having a couple of cocktails, and they're going to start yelling at each other about politics or religion or whatever. And it's the same thing with any kind of family. And I think it was almost good that they got that out the open. Trae kind of made a point the night after they had that little discussion meeting or whatever it was. But I think all is good now. I think it's going to be great. And I do think that having the veteran guys is going to be a big help with that kind of thing too. But I really think the chemistry is going to be great with all of these veteran guys that we brought in. It was going to take a while anyway, because you can't get used to all these different new guys playing. Like Trae has to get used to passing to different guys. And I think it was going to take 10, 15, maybe 20 games anyway. Mm-hmm. But now with these injuries, it might set it back a little bit. But if they could just keep their head above water and, stay within that range of the, 8, 9, 10 range in the East, and then get ready to make a push in the second half, I think everything's going to be great.
And the thing I took notice of that myself, Steve, personally, is that first of all, I'm glad that it was aired out relatively sooner than later. Right. And later on in the season, where you have different, kind of conversations about it. And even more so, listen, the thing that I think that Hawks fans should kind of embrace is the fact that this is two guys that wants the same thing. We should embrace the fact that both parties, at least I feel and believe, equally are as passionate about winning and are competitors, which is a good thing to show that they're not just coming in here and making big money and win, lose, or draw. There's some of those guys probably around the league too, is just kind of like, well, we do, we don't. These are guys that want to win. These are guys that want to change.
Somebody in Brooklyn who hasn't showed up for a week or so and hasn't called the coach back.
My dude, Steve Holman. That's what I brought him on this show for. Where we did have a situation where the team had lost, 4 games in a row, I believe. Right. Who do you believe is that? Who's the I'm fed up guy? Who's the guy that's saying, I'm not going to allow for us to trend downward again, like maybe some of the previous years consecutively? We're not going to be the same Mohawks. I've had enough. We've come too far. Who have you kind of seen and or have gotten the vibe or the energy or the feel that's kind of taking over control of that, coming maybe out of a timeout, out of a huddle, and saying, listen, we're ready to go to war. If y'all with me, come with me. We're taking the floor, but I'm tired of this crap and we're not going to make it 5 straight or whatever.
I'm going to give you a name that might surprise you right now.
Okay.
Solomon Hill.
Really? Okay.
Veteran guy, Solomon Hill, has been around the block. He was in the finals, of course, last year. He's seen a lot in the NBA. I had him on the post game last night afterwards, and he's that kind of guy. I think that will, be vocal and be the kind of leader that guys will look to. I mean, there's going to be several on the team, like Rondo. We already mentioned how he's so vocal and
sure.
and can do that kind of thing. But Solomon Hill, I think, is a guy that they all will respect and listen to.
You know what? I'm glad that you mentioned that, man, because that was probably one of my bigger questions for this team, and that I'm glad to see that they acquired somebody like that, not just somebody who a lot of times plays out on the perimeter and can, like you said, have been around the block, a veteran in this league, but even more so willing to help and assist the growth of some of the younger guys into growing them up a little bit in terms of just, growing up just in general growth. How would you maybe assess the way that, how can I say this? Maybe the way that this team has the ability for this team to get to the free throw line. Because at one point in time, I know probably a little over a week or so ago, they were number one in the league at getting to the line. I'm not sure really where they are. No, I know Trae was really up there in terms of his attempts, 16 or 17 a game or whatever. What do you make exactly of that, and how this team has been able to get to the free throw line and make a little bit of extra money? I like to call it the free space on a bingo card.
Well, he's got a great knack for drawing those fouls, and I think he would still be right up there near the top if Steve Nash hadn't made his comments about, that's not basketball, when he would stop and guys would run into him. And I definitely think that the calls have slowed down in Trae's favor since then. So I think he has to adjust a little bit to that, but we're still shooting. We didn't have a great night last night at the line, but still shooting 81%, which is much better than they have in the last few years. So I think that's going to be a good thing, and veteran guys can get to the line. You've seen it too over the years. They always say that no special calls or this and that, but veteran guys that have been around, they're going to get a call. That maybe a young guy isn't going to get. So I think that's in our benefit too, to have all these veterans on the team. Plus, it's another year for Trae, another year for John Collins, and another year under the belt for Kevin Huerter. So they're going to learn these little tricks and to be able to get to the line.
That's one thing that I did notice is after I guess Trae sometimes comes off of that curl and he's got his defender now trailing him and he's behind him, and he puts the brakes on real fast to make the defender bump into him from behind and throw the floater up and gets to the line and makes some easy money. I told you we didn't want to have you on for too long. I know you're a busy man. You want to save the voice and all that good stuff on the West Coast. So what I do want to do is invite you over into a special portion of our show that's called Quick Release. It's essentially somewhat like a rapid fire, a host of probably about 5 or 6 questions or so that you just kind of answer relatively quickly, if you will. Sure. The first one is if I was to write if I was to have a dry erase board and a dry erase marker, and I would say to put one word on this board that would determine exactly what this team needs to do to come away on the better side of a 3-game road trip on the West Coast, what would that one word be, and why?
I would say tenacity. They have to be, tenacious out there. They need to, have the mental strength to handle being on the West Coast. Number one. Number two, being on a 3 games in 4 nights. Number 4, having a back-to-back. And then number 5, maybe knowing that they have to come home and play Monday afternoon at 2:30 after playing Saturday night until 1 a.m. Atlanta time.
Okay. What would you grade? And this dude's been doing a great job at rebounding and creating second chance points for sure. How would you grade Clint Capella and his contribution to this team so far?
Well, it's been phenomenal. I think he's really added a lot to it. He's even gotten better from the free throw line the last few games, which was really a problem for him early. But he's a rebounding machine. He takes a lot of pressure off of John Collins doing that. And I just think, he's a tremendous help that way, especially like you say with offensive rebounds.
Who is the unsung hero on this team? Maybe a guy that's not maybe getting a whole bunch of praise or being talked about nearly enough for what he brings to this team so far.
Well, right now, I told you about Solomon Hill, but I also think that Brandon Goodwin is a guy that we should mention in that category because he didn't expect to play at all this year with Rondo and Chris Dunn. And Lloyd Pierce had told him during training camp, you're going to be out there, but you may not play every night, but just be ready. And, lo and behold, he was ready, and he made some big baskets last night again. And I think he's been one of the unsung heroes because he's had to back up Trae, and it's pretty much been just the two of them at point guard and with all these injuries.
Steve, thank you so much, man. I think that's going to do it. You know what? I had some of those questions for our rapid fire, and you had already answered so many of them. You're a pro, dude. You've been doing this for quite some time, and I'm just really, really glad. Listen, I obviously went a whole separate direction with the radio station, whatnot, but during my duration and my time there, I definitely learned a lot, obviously, from you, and really appreciate you for everything that you've kind of put in place to help assist me, and glad that I've been able to assist you in all the ways that I have as well.
Well, thank you, Deshaun. I know that you're going to have a big future ahead of you, and the broadcast thing and the basketball thing, both for you are going to be big time. So I wish you well too. And anytime you need me, you know how to get me.
I appreciate you, Steve, and good luck to the Hawks, obviously, and looking forward to doing some more things with you in the future.
Thank you, sir.
That is Steve Holman, the voice of the Atlanta Hawks. Again, just for those of you who may have missed the long resume, 4-time Georgia Sportscaster of the Year, Atlanta Hawks Hall of Fame, or City of Atlanta Sports Hall of Fame, State of Georgia Radio Hall of Fame recipient. That is the voice of the Atlanta Hawks. Make sure that you give this dude a follow. You're an Atlanta Hawks fan. You're diehard. I told some people I was bringing Steve Holman on, and they're like, man, I can't wait for you to bring Steve on. I can't wait. I'm like, go and follow him. Dude's consistently tweeting and always has all these different things about the Hawks, and I even take note of a lot of those things too. I've been doing it for years. Make sure you give him a follow. That is at Real Voice of Hawk. Again, at Real Voice of Hawk, and always grateful and appreciative that he had the opportunity to join us, and just seeing some of the people that checked in and out of the show during the time that Steve was with us. Look at that. Goat and baby goat. Now, trust me, I'm not even close to being a goat. I can say that Steve is certainly a goat. 36 years and over 2,500 games called consecutively. Man, just to be able to say that you've done that, and for me being a young guy in this game who just absolutely admires Steve's efforts and his abilities to not even just do the job. And obviously it takes a lot of wear and tear on the brain and on the throat and so forth and the voice, but just admired by the consistency and the persistency that he's put forward. I definitely can't call, but I can call him the GOAT. I appreciate that as well. And how about my dude, Oscar? Oscar checked with us from time to time. Appreciate him for being a consistent contributor to the show. Hawks legend, Oscar Sanchez, I know is a really, really big fan of the Atlanta Hawks, diehard fan, and me and him talk quite back and forth quite a bit. Trae James also came to show some love with his fire emojis. I appreciate it. And you guys can be much like Trae James and Billy Parks, Oscar Sanchez. Appreciate them for joining, just like Steve, and be a part of this program. Remember, you can go and find it anywhere, absolutely anywhere that you find your favorite podcast. You never know exactly who I'm going to bring on. We've got Dan Dockage coming up. We just had Fran Fraschilla last week, Jay Billis not too long ago, Seth Greenberg talking some college basketball, more NBA, more college basketball is coming up to talk to us a little bit about some of his high school basketball showcases in the metro Atlanta area as well. So anywhere that you find your favorite podcast, go and subscribe. iTunes, Google Podcasts, Red Circle, Spotify, Stitcher, the whole nine. Make sure you go and subscribe to your mama, to your grandmama, to your friends, to your enemies. Tell any and everybody, tell your baby mama, for crying out loud. She might be interested in where you can find the best, the most informational, the most educational, and the most entertaining basketball content on the planet in the form of a podcast, that being Tate's Take. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review. leave up to a 5-star rating review, if you will, even a comment, whatever, what have you, on the page as well. Always appreciative of that. Make sure you subscribe and follow along on all social media platforms, specifically on Twitter at Tate's Take Hoops. That is at TATES TAKEHOOPS #basketball lives. I'll get back to you guys in a few. And thank you so much for those of you who have already subscribed and will do so in the future. See you then.